So, one of the hugest decisions that a person has to make when they're in a very painful marriage or relationship is at some point, should I stay or should I go? And I know in my own situation, we were together for about 20 years, and it took 2 years to really, really, really be sure. So this is the beginning of a whole new chapter of life. And for a lot of you listening, you're in a situation where maybe you've been in it a long time. You don't, one in two people don't even realize that they're in an abusive relationship. And so how do we get to that point where we decide that it's more painful to stay than to go? So today's guest is Karen Covy, and she is very skilled and has a lot of experience in helping people make those big, hairy, emotional divorce decisions. So Karen, thank you so much for being on. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Lisa, it is my pleasure to be here. So, I am a divorce lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, collaborative divorce professional, and a coach. So, I help people from that very moment that you mentioned when you're in the throes of, do I stay or do I go? And I take them, for those who want to get a divorce, who that's their decision and they feel good about it, and I get them to that place. Then I take them all the way through the divorce process so that they can do it hopefully better, and hopefully with less conflict and less expense. But that all depends on who they're married to.
Yeah, tell me about it. So, I mean, how do you get people to feel more comfortable with making that decision? In our experience, we tend to deal with people who are already out, who have made the decision. That's actually easier for us because I find that a lot of our clients have been in these coercively controlling relationships, and that it's very hard for them to make decisions. And we say, when you're ready, when you've made the decision, then we can proceed forward and get into all the legal stuff and help you use your lawyer efficiently. But a lot of them are having a really hard time. So I'm so thrilled that now we have somebody that we can say, talk to her, because I feel like I can't help somebody make that decision.
Right. And well, there's a difference, and I want to point this out, but there's a big difference between helping someone make the decision for themselves, which is what I do, and forcing them or making the decision for them, which I do not do because it's not my life, right?
Mhm.
So when you're thinking about, is this really working? Is this what I want? Do I want to stay married or stay in this relationship? The first thing that most people need to understand, you need to normalize this. I promise you, you are not the only one who's struggling with this decision. There are, like, I don't know how many people, I can't give you a statistic because it's not like anyone does research on how many people are thinking about something, right? But it's kind of hard to get the good stats. But the point is, I know that a lot of people struggle anywhere from 2 to 7 years, and sometimes longer than that. So the
Mhm.
fact that you're in the struggle, do not beat yourself up for, oh my God, I should know this. I should, be able to make a decision. What's wrong with me? There is nothing wrong with you. This is a huge decision, and you want to take a step back and do everything right, because what you don't want is to make a decision and look back and say, ooh, woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? I wish I wouldn't have done this. Or be in the opposite position, which is where people never think about, which is you're now 5 years down the road and you're still stuck. You are in
Mhm.
exactly the same place as you are right this minute, and you haven't changed and you haven't made a decision. That's a decision too.
So when somebody finds you, I imagine something has happened in their life that makes them even consider leaving the relationship. Can you think of any particular, I mean, I can think of for myself, but I want to hear from the general, like, what do you see where someone's like, this happened or this is going on and now I found you, Karen. So here's what it is. Like, what are some common, I almost want to say red flags of divorce or something.
Well, the most common is someone catches their spouse cheating,
Mhm.
right? That's a big, that I would say that is actually more than a red flag. That's like fireworks are going off. And so here's the interesting part. Not every person who catches their spouse cheating is ready to just say, okay, that's it, I'm done,
I
right?
know. I know.
Especially if you've been in a long-term marriage. This is a hard, big decision. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you have the added shame of everybody else looking at you. Like, if they know, they're like, what's the matter with her? Why didn't she leave? Why is she staying with a cheater? Right. And then now all of a sudden you have that cheating tarnish or whatever associated with you. And that's doubly bad. Right. So cheating is the first thing that will make people say, yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is you just get tired, right? So you've got that little niggling feeling inside of you, like, I don't know if this is good. And then something else little happens and you're like, I don't know. And the little things add up and add up and add up over time until one day you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if this is what I want, right? That's in many ways the harder decision because you don't have the burning red flag in front of you that you can say, okay, you did this, you're the bad person, I'm out. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, something's off. Something's not right. I'm not happy. How come I'm never happy anymore? And over time, that builds and builds and builds until the pain of staying starts to become greater than the fear of leaving.
Yeah. So that second part, the B answer, A and B, yeah, we never see that. We get the extreme situations where it's like the hammer on the head, you know about it. What about, I know in my own situation, because I was with my ex for 20 years, those last two were thinking, I got to go, but I got to figure it out. Where there's this pressure, whether it's internal or societal or from our spouse, like, if you break up this family, then you are going to be responsible for all kinds of other people's pain, especially children. And I know, and I felt like I shouldn't have done this, but we went through so many rounds of couples counseling, which made things much worse. But the first couples counselor said, before you can make a big decision like a divorce, you should go to 6 months of therapy with me, $200 an hour, not including insurance. And this was a long time ago. Because you don't ever want to just get the divorce, even though there had been all kinds of stuff by that point. And she said, you need to really be sure that this decision is right. But at the time, I already felt like I had made the decision, and it was just torture to have to go through this weekly crap of continued emotional abuse and lying and whatever. Like, what do you think about that when there's all this pressure from other people, including professionals, sometimes saying you're not ready to make the decision, even though you feel like you're ready, you're not?
Listen to yourself, listen to your gut, right? Now, I also believe that this isn't a decision that you should make lightly. That having been said, I've never known anyone who did. Ever. Like, ever. And I've been doing this decades.
Hmm.
People take marriage seriously. They work on it. They think about it. They struggle with the decision, right? And when you know in your heart, in your gut that you are done, then why are you going through marriage counseling, right? Now, is
Yeah.
marriage counseling helpful? Yes, but it's got to be helpful in the right situation with the right person. And, not with somebody who it sounds like was just trying to sell you massive amounts of therapy sessions.
Right.
Um, and maybe
Horrible.
in support of the therapist, or, maybe she really believed she could make a difference. But here's the thing. As a professional, I can tell you, I sit around with other divorce professionals, especially in a collaborative divorce setting. And, sometimes we debrief after a meeting and we're like, why are we working harder than the people at getting this done?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
If the professionals are working harder at saving your marriage than you are, there's a problem there.
Ooh, great quote.
Thank you.
That's good. All right. So now, we like touched on it, and let's expand a little more. Children. It is really, really different to get a divorce when you have children and when you don't. And we have clients who are in high conflict who do not have children, but the luck, or this, they're very fortunate to be able to then cut ties completely and walk away. But for the majority of our people, they have children and they get away, but the children are still a huge part of the connection. Can you talk about how kids factor into that decision? Because like I said, that was used to keep me in the marriage. Like, if you leave me, I am, you're ruining the kids' lives. I'm not going to pay for their college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in the near decade since, the kids have been deeply affected by that decision.
Yeah, it's first of all, you have to stop listening to what your spouse is saying because a
Mhm.
lot of it is garbage, right? I mean, the fact that he was saying, I'm not going to pay for college, your kids are going to be screwed up for life. All right. It depends on what the law in your state is. Some states, like Illinois, require a parent's contribution to college expenses. So you can say whatever you want, but it's not exactly true, right?
Mhm.
And are your kids going to be messed up for life? Study after study has shown that it is not divorce that screws up children, it's conflict. And
Mm.
if you've got that kind of a marriage, your kids are already living in conflict, right? So there's already a problem. Will the conflict ramp up if you get a divorce? Well, yeah, if your spouse makes it ramp up, of course it will. But there are things that you can do to counteract that kind of behavior as best you can. And you have to be smart about it. If there's one thing I tell my clients, it's like, you need a plan. And if you are really in that kind of an abusive, high conflict situation, if your spouse has a mental health issue, a personality disorder, narcissism, any, or bipolar or anything like that, you don't just jump into a divorce. You don't wake up one morning and go, okay, today's the day. That would be a very bad idea. What you need to do is say, okay, if I'm going to do this, what ducks do I have to get in which rows in order to give this the best chance possible for going in a way that won't destroy the children, right? You've got to bolster the children up. For some people who knew that they just never could get away, they just waited
Mhm.
until the youngest was 18, which
Yeah.
is like really, really hard and horrible. But I interviewed a woman on my podcast who did exactly that. She was in a terribly abusive situation. Her husband would not let her have a credit card in her name. She didn't have a bank account in her name. She had no job, no access to anything. He isolated her. I mean, it was pretty awful. And she used to scrape couple dollars here, couple dollars there, grocery money, put the money away instead of buying a coffee, whatever it was. And over time was able to amass a little nest egg so that when her youngest turned 18, she was like, I'm out of here. But she made a plan. And sometimes the plan might be long term. Sometimes it can be much shorter than that. But you have to plan for this or you're going to end up jumping into like who knows what.
Yeah. And as you say that, I told you that it took me 2 years to get out from the moment I was like, oh, we're done. Even though I did the couples counseling with 3 different therapists over that time period. But I knew because I had seen other people just decide to get a divorce and do it wrong and waste a bunch of money, et cetera. So in terms of planning, are there certain things that you can talk about that people need to consider when making that plan? Because in my head, it was like, financial. How am I going to get out of here and figure out where I'm going to live and what's going to happen with the kids? So what are some elements that should be part of that plan? And especially remember, you're talking to people, our audience tends to be people in domestic violence situations.
So financial is very, very important because if you don't have the money to live, you're going to be in a world of hurt, right? Nobody wants to leave an abusive marriage and end up homeless. That's not a good plan, right? So it's about doing what I just told you the woman did, where she was scraping money. Find a way to put money aside somewhere. I mean, I literally do. This sounds kind of primitive, but I don't care if it's in a black box buried in your backyard. It doesn't matter where it is. You need access to cash. That's number one.
What
Number
do you think
two,
about gift cards?
gift cards are beautiful. I love gift cards. I love gift cards because you just put 25, 50, $100, whatever it is on the gift card. And then you've got the gift card,
Mhm.
right? So those gift cards are great. Prepaid credit cards, like, or a prepaid debit card is
Uh-huh.
also kind of the similar thing if you can sneak some money into there. But here's the other thing too. You've got to be very careful that you don't leave a digital trail that your spouse can find.
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So, that's another idea. Good old fashioned cash, right? Having money, like if you have a parent or a sibling or somebody that you really, really, really trust, maybe they can set some money aside for you. So that's one element of it, is that financial element. But I also suggest people hook into the domestic violence shelter in your area. Find out, there are so many resources available, you probably don't even know what they are, right?
I know.
So
I
it's about hooking in, getting those resources. If you don't have a job, okay, start. The first time you think about getting one should not be when you walk out the door. You should be at least thinking about it. See if is there a way you can put together a resume? Is there a way that you can do these things without being found out, so that when you do walk out the door, you can hit the ground running? Or do you have a friend or family member who's willing to give you a job? Like,
mm,
that would actually be the best thing. The other thing you need to do is also shore up your relationship with your kids. Make sure they have as much support and psychological stability as possible before you leave. For example, if like with teenagers are tough no matter like what your household situation
you're
is, right?
talking to a former high school English teacher. Yeah.
There you go. So, you know.
Yes.
So it's about making sure that you're supportive of your teenager, that you're on good paper, that they have as much psychological support as they can get. There are some organizations, I don't know if they're all over the country, but there's a group. It's in Illinois. I know it's more than just Illinois. It's called Rainbows for All Children. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
It's the divorce support group for children. Check out you can't enroll your kid until the time comes, but you can check out what resources are available. Do you have health insurance? Are therapists covered? Who could be there? Who can you have on board for your children just in case? And have like a little blurb written that you could go and talk to their teachers, their high school, or their, school counselor, their doctors, they're the people who are going to have contact with your kids, so they know, oh, hey, if my child starts behaving strangely, like, let me know. This is what's going on. We just want to let you know, right? So the more back end legwork you can do before you hit the road, the better off your kids are going to be too.
Yeah. And I was thinking when you talked about with therapy, well, first of all, the Domestic Violence Center, I'm now a state certified domestic violence advocate, but I had no idea. In my head, I thought it was for battered women. I didn't understand domestic violence. There are tremendous free resources there. 2 years after getting out, I was getting free counseling. My kids were getting free counseling. It was amazing. So a lot of places have domestic violence centers that give all kinds of free resources, more than what I've mentioned. And it's worth getting in touch. However, COVID did place an enormous burden on them. So we've heard lots of complaints about centers not being able to help, shelters being overcrowded, taking a long time to get back to people. And that, unfortunately, is just from, the reality of what happened during the pandemic.
Yeah, COVID was horrible for anybody who was in an abusive situation,
Yeah.
because now you were stuck in the house with your abuser, and it was really bad.
Yeah. But in terms of therapy for the kids, I feel like one of the things we see often in a high conflict divorce and post separation is a difficult ex who tries to prohibit the kids from getting therapy. And so one thing that's helpful is to, before the separation, if you can get your kids into therapy so you can show it that this is something they're already doing, and to argue to keep the status quo, especially to transition the kids through these two different difficult points of their lives, you have a better chance of keeping the therapist rather than attempting to, when you have joint legal decision making, to work with somebody on getting your kids help, because there's all kinds of issues with that.
100%. That's a really good point. I mean, and that's part of what I'm saying about the planning beforehand. Like, to your point, if you've got your kids in therapy, if you've got support for your kids, if you've got all of that set up before you divorce, now, or before anyone leaves or files or anything, now you've got a much better chance of keeping your kids in that supportive environment than you would to get them there in the first place. You're 100% right.
Right. And a lot of that, from in our experience, and I know I'm talking to a divorce lawyer, but you think about what matters to people involved in these cases. And a big thing we see is consistency, stability, and routine for the children. So if this is already part of their routine, that's the
Yep.
foundation of their lives. Like, many professionals don't want to disrupt it.
Yeah. And make sure that, it doesn't, the professional help is a big part of it, but, to the extent you can also make sure that your kids are like comfortable in school, have a good friend group. Like if there's that bad kid friend that you're like, ooh, I don't know about, separate your child from that bad kid. And I'm saying that in air quotes here, but,
Yeah.
from the bad influence kid before you do this. Do your best to shore up your children as much as you can in any way that you can, because once the divorce starts in process, all bets are off.
Yeah. What do you think about kids knowing information? Because it's different for different ages, but we know first of all, we know kids hear a lot more than we think they do, and they understand a lot more than we think they do. And so to keep that a secret, what happens when they start asking questions, but you haven't done anything yet?
So let me see if I've got this right. So the kids are asking, are you leaving? Are you leaving?
Yes,
And you
yes.
haven't done anything
Yeah.
yet.
And it's like you're trying to keep it a secret and you're trying to plan, and they sense a change and they want to know because it's their lives that are going to be probably affected more than anybody else's, because they're the ones who have to go back and forth, among other things.
100%. But
Yeah.
you're
How do you
walking
deal
in
with
really,
kids who
really
are like, tell me, well, I know there's something going into your phone and discovering all kinds of things. Like, how do you deal with that?
well. First of all, know that this is a thing. And if you've got the kind of kid that's going to pick up your phone and go into it, then be very careful with what you had on your phone. Like
Mhm.
that's number one. I have had clients who were in that situation and it didn't go well. Okay.
Mm.
So, and here's the thing. Your children are products of both you and your spouse. And so they're going to feel allegiance to both of you. And if you tell them, oh, yeah, I'm planning on leaving a week from Tuesday, like to expect them to keep that secret from
Mhm.
their other parent, even if they don't like their other parent, even if like it's not going to happen. Kids have a really hard time keeping secrets. Obviously, the younger they are, the more stuff just comes out.
Right.
But even teenagers, like they'll tell their best friend, and then their best friend will go home and be telling their mother, and their mother is best friends with your father, and the blah, and like word gets out, right? So you do not want to have that happen. As much as you want to, I would not recommend telling your kids anything until you've got the whole plan in place and it's like the night before or the day of, and you're saying, let's just do this, and here's the plan, and blah blah blah, right? Whatever the plan may be. I don't suggest telling them in advance. Now, what do you do when they say, I know something's going on? It's just you have to find a way. It depends on what your relationship with your kid is to
Yeah.
say, you know what, honey, there's, you can't really say there's nothing going on, but you kind of got to like, how do you be judicious and like sort of skirt the issue? It's like, you know what? If anything ever changes, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
You'll be
I'm
the first to
figuring
know.
it out. I'm
Yeah.
figuring
I'm,
out what's,
that's a good one.
yeah.
Right. It's like, yeah, things aren't perfect, but we're still here. We're still
Right.
here,
Yeah.
but you can't, you've got to be careful. And a lot also depends on where your kids' allegiances lie too. I mean, is your spouse going to pump your child for information? Now you just put them in a really hard position.
Hmm. Yeah. That's what we're dealing with a lot now with, what we focus on a lot is getting people through the court system during a divorce or separation and post judgment. And now we're focusing a lot on stuff with the kids and the allegiances and the loyalty and how to deal with it, because we see that often in these high conflict situations, a toxic partner will try to turn the kids against the other parent because of, if you love me, then
Yeah.
you have to not like the other parent. That's a whole other thing.
Right. And the other thing that happens with that is that the parent who is the more stable parent, the one who is actually loving and healthy and mentally with it, right? they're usually the one that gets it the hardest,
Yeah.
because on some level, the kid, like, I'll tell you a story. I had a friend of mine who was a divorce lawyer, and he and his wife had gotten divorced, and this was a zillion years ago, right? And the kids, he would come over, and the kids would, his wife would say, "You did this," or "You did," like, he and his wife would get in a big fight. She
Yeah.
was abusive to him, blah blah blah, and the kids always took her side,
Mm-hmm.
and he was devastated,
Yes.
devastated. And then time went by. I mean, he still had a relationship with his kids, but he was just destroyed, right? Time went by, and the kids turned 18. And then one day they were all together, him and the kids. And he was like, how come you always took mom's side? And the kids said, "Dad, we knew you were right. We just didn't want you to fight."
Wow.
And so they take the side of the weaker parent because they know the stronger one can handle it.
Wow. That is mic drop. Wow.
And that sucks if you're the stronger parent, if you're the more together parent, but understand that that might be what's going on. Now, of course, there are some situations where the abusive parent so twists the kid that they never get to see the other parent again. And that, I don't want to make light of this or say, don't worry about it. No, worry about it.
Yeah.
But understand that, there's a lot of potential dynamics that are going on, and your job is to be there to love your kid, to support your kid in whatever way you can and are able to, and just get them till they're 18.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So speaking of that, I was talking to a therapist a few months ago in an interview. I think it was him. And he said that one of the hardest times to divorce with kids, which many people wait until the kids go to college, but is when kids are going off to college, because when you wait for that point and then you separate, they're going off to figure out the identities, and then what do they come back to? Like, they expect this intact household, and now it's like, where do I go? Who am I? And it's really, really hard. I mean, I don't know if there's ever a right time to divorce. What do you think? Is there a right time?
There's never a right time to, or an easy time to do a hard thing, right?
Mm.
It's going to be hard no matter what, period, full stop. However, to that research, I've also looked at some of it, and the kids who are devastated when they go off to college and their parents suddenly get divorced are the ones who thought the parents' marriage was fine. The
Yeah.
kids that come from households where everybody's fighting, everybody's screaming, everybody's all, they're kind of like, "Oh yeah, this sucks, but we saw it coming."
Yeah.
And let's be honest, children are, even an 18-year-old is like, they're mini adults, they're humans, right?
Yeah.
So what do they care about? Me. How is this going to affect me?
Right.
Right? So if they're off to college and your divorce means that they don't have enough money for tuition next semester and they're going to have to drop out, now they're upset, right?
Right.
But
Right.
if you've kind of got a plan to keep them on level and keep them stable going through, or you're not paying for college now, they're on scholarships or whatever that might be, then that's a different situation than when your divorce is going to dramatically affect them. The same thing is true with teenagers. We used to say the worst time to get a divorce was when your kids were teenagers, because when you're a teenager, your hormones are like out of control and everything's about you and you're worried about what people think. And now there's social media and that's a whole nother level of stuff and blah, 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 blah. Well, our kids are maturing later now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the 20 is the new 12. And so, I mean, how
Yeah.
many parents have kids? The boomerang generation, they're living in their basement. They don't want to get a job. It's all the things, right? And I'm not saying this is everybody, but so the point is, what used to be, it's worse to get a divorce when your kids are teenagers. That I wouldn't be surprised if that age wasn't creeping up a little bit or expanding up a little bit. But at some point, you have to remember the airplane and the oxygen mask.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. And at some point, like, it's one thing to say, okay, I can tough it out for a year. I can tough it out for 2 years, but can I tough it out for 10 or 20? That might be asking too much. And what are you teaching your children?
I was just about to say that. Right. because what you're modeling for them is what they then think is normal, no matter what you say. And it's familiar, and we gravitate towards what's familiar. So whatever's
Yep.
happening in that household, the kids are going to think that this is just how it is in
Yep.
every relationship. So
Yeah.
that's the tough part about staying for the sake of the kids in an unhealthy relationship. And also about the college thing, I don't remember if it was the same therapist I was talking to, but somebody was telling me that sometimes when you are in the midst of a fighting and there's going to be a divorce, that boarding school and summer camp can be very helpful for kids because it takes them out of the conflict and they can just do their thing and they're not present for it.
I love that idea. I really love that idea. There's actually a really good YouTube video of a woman who's a professor and who did some research with, she was a college professor and she did some research with her students on, who was really affected by their parents' divorce when they went away to college and who wasn't. And I think she did I don't know if it's a TED talk or just a talk. And I'll give you her name for the show notes. I
You
want
have
to
to.
say, I
Yeah.
think it's Tamara Afifi or something like that. I will get you the link,
Okay.
but it's like a 15, 20-minute talk, and it was really eye-opening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Okay. So another thing is, so we talk a lot about with the kids, but back to ourselves and our own oxygen masks. How helpful is it if I'm in this relationship to make a physical list of the pros and cons of staying? And do people still do that?
Yeah, people still do that because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
It is a decision-making framework, okay? The only problem with it is it doesn't work. Because
Really?
oh my gosh. Have you ever made a pros and cons list? You make the little
Yeah.
T chart
Yeah.
and you say, okay, here's all the pros and here's all the cons. And the cons outweigh the pros like 5-1, right?
Right.
So any rational person would go, okay, I shouldn't do this thing. But you look at that list and you go, okay, I can see that there's more cons, but the pros are so much more important.
Well, yeah,
And then,
the weight of the different
yeah,
factors.
exactly. And so you wait. So the point is it a bad thing to do? No, it's not a bad thing to do. Is it going to actually help you make a decision? Yeah, probably not.
Okay. All
No.
right. Yeah. So, so then before we get into tips for making decisions instead of the pros and cons list, um, I'm losing my train of thought. I just lost my train of thought. Okay. Anyway, we'll just go with it then. And I'll interrupt you as soon as it comes back to me.
Okay.
But for making, okay, I got it. Coercive control. People have been in these relationships for a long time, often where without realizing it, we've given our authority to another person. And I know that many people come out of these relationships, men and women, where it is so hard to make even the simplest decision, like ordering from a menu, because we've lost ourselves. We don't know who we are anymore. And now we're put in the situation to make these huge life-changing decisions that are going to affect everything. That some of our people have been married for decades. They were teenagers or early 20s. Like they have no idea of who they are. How can they make a decision to leave and go into the unknown, or just make decisions in general after their brains have been affected?
Yeah. The short answer is practice. Start small and practice. And, so first of all, you've got to work on yourself first, right? Remember, the oxygen mask, it all starts here. So the first thing you're going to do is get yourself support. If you can get into therapy, individual therapy, not marriage counseling,
Right.
individual therapy. Get some support for yourself. Build a support team of friends or family members that you can call and just talk to. And you can say to them, hey, I just need to vent, or I just need to know, is what I'm telling you, does that sound normal? Do I sound like I'm crazy? Do I, because at some point you don't know anymore, right? So it's like, get your team around you. And then there's some little things that you can do. For instance, decision fatigue, the inability to make a decision is a real thing. Like, I think according to Inc. magazine, today, human beings in our society have to make 35,000 decisions a day.
Oh my God.
A day. Everything from what do I watch, what do I wear, where do I go, and blah, blah, and like on and on and on and on. So one way to get better at making decisions is to eliminate as many decisions as you can, right? For example, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, they are always in a black t-shirt, or Steve Jobs was when he was alive, right? They had, why did they do that? Because then they didn't have to use their brain power to decide what am I going to wear today. It was already done, right? So as much as you can, narrow down the number of decisions that you have to make in a day. And you're going to be the freshest, theoretically, and the most able to make decisions earlier in the day. Great. So at night, if you don't want to wear a black t-shirt every single day,
Yeah, I
okay.
would never.
Yeah, I know. I would
I'm
never.
like a fashion-y person. I would never.
But you can lay out your outfit for tomorrow tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, because then that eliminates the decision from tomorrow. Some people eat oatmeal for breakfast every single day. Why? Because they don't have to think about it. So it's like as many of those little tiny things that take brain power, and you're like, what difference does that make? Well, they add up. So the more little decisions that you can take off the table, the more space you open in your head for the big stuff, right? That's another thing that people can do, and start working on making decisions. When you go out to eat, don't say what so many of us do, oh, I'll have what she's having.
Mm-hmm.
No. Look at the menu. Don't even think about what the other person, and order what you want. The more you practice making decisions, the better you get at it, the more confident you get at it, and the bigger decisions you can make.
I love that, because it makes me think about, again, bringing it back to my own experience. I got in my relationship when I was in my early 20s. Again, I was with my ex for 20 years, and I was very independent and creative, I thought, but I had never actually thought about, it sounds so stupid, I never thought about what I wanted in another person. And getting out of the relationship, one of the things I did, and I know a lot of our people listening are not ready for this yet, but it had been 2 years, and I was like, I'm ready. I want to try online dating. Like, I never did that before. And so an exercise that was fascinating that I somehow just did was I made a list of qualities that I like in another person, which I never thought about. It's crazy, like, to go, to be in my 40s and never make a list. And it was and I was thinking, like, what kind of person would I like to meet? And one of the things on the list was, I like people who are comfortable moving furniture, because I love going to tag sales, yard sales. And I always love bringing things in and like trying different like arrangements of things and putting different art on the wall. And my ex hated it. He called it churning. He's like, stop churning. But I love like change and, changing up my environment. So that I thought that's the kind of person that I like to be around, someone who's flexible and open-minded. And when I made that list, I realized that my ex-husband, who I was with for half my life, was not anything like the qualities on that list. The kind of person I liked was not him. And it was astonishing to think that I had never thought about what I liked and what I wanted. And a lot of people in these abusive relationships, we often are very easygoing. And so part of the pattern of behavior with allowing somebody else to make decisions starts during the dating period. When someone says, where do you want to go out to? And you go, it's up to you. I don't mind. That seems like really wonderful. That's a wonderful quality, but it lays a foundation of letting other people make decisions for you, which is not really healthy. So I love that you say the part about the menu, like pay attention. Like sometimes it involves like, what do I want? And pause and think instead of just, this is easy. I don't know. I don't care. Like, no, like get to know yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that will help you make better decisions.
Yeah. And it's also an exercise in personal responsibility,
right,
which a lot of people don't want to think about. But if you pick something on the menu and you get it and you're like, ooh, this is really bad. You picked it, right? You have no one to complain to except yourself. Whereas if you're just like, oh, I'll have what they have, and you don't like it, you go, oh, well, they chose badly, right? It's about owning your stuff, right? And having the courage to say, I did this. It didn't work out. Okay, now I know next time I'll choose something different.
Right. Like regaining agency in your own life.
Yep, exactly.
Love it. All right. Well, Karen, thank you so much for talking about this. I've learned some things, and I don't know if you can see, but I'm a major note taker. So some of the things you're writing down is like, ooh, I'm going to share this with our clients. I'm going to put some quotes up, like super helpful. Can you tell people how to find you? And we'll put
Yeah,
it in the notes too.
the easiest way to find me is on my website. It's Karen Covy, KarenCovy.com. There is no E in my version of Covey. Otherwise, I'd be related to somebody really famous, and I'd be on Easy Street right now.
Yeah, that's great. All right. And you have written but you've written a book and you have a podcast. Can you mention that too?
I have all the things, right? So I
Yeah.
have a book that's available on Amazon. It's called When Happily Ever After Ends: How to Survive Your Divorce Emotionally, Financially, and Legally. That is now in its second edition.
Wow,
I have a
congratulations.
podcast that's called Off the Fence, and it's about, surprise, surprise, decision making. It looks at decision making from a variety of different ways. It's not just divorce, but there's a lot of divorce related information in there. I also created an online program called the Divorce Roadmap. It's in its 2.0 version. This year we'll probably go 3.0. And I'm working on a mediation preparation program that should be available shortly. Again, on my website. Everything is on my website.
Excellent. Well, I am so glad that we met. We both did that high conflict divorce summit. I think that's how we met
Yeah.
a couple months ago. And
Yeah.
I've been on your podcast and now you're on ours. And we so appreciate you taking the time. And of course, if it's okay with you, you're coming back.
I would love to. I can talk about this stuff forever. And I think it's so important because like so many people don't know. And it's just knowledge, knowledge is the first step towards freedom. It really
Exactly.
is.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing such important knowledge and wisdom because we really believe in empowerment through education.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care.